Who was the dead man in the pond? He was John Sassamon, a man who lived his life between worlds. Sassaman was a Massachusetts Indian who was born around 1620. When he was just 10 years old, Puritans from England arrived in Massachusetts Bay and began to organize a colony. Sassaman's parents may have been among the indigenous people who welcomed the newcomers, but they paid a terrible price for their hospitality. Smallpox, a disease brought to the Americas by Europeans, ravaged the Massachusetts colony in 1633. Sassaman's parents were stricken. Before their deaths, and perhaps believing that the devastating waves of disease the English brought with them were an indication of the power of the English god, Sassaman's parents converted to Christianity. Sassaman, then an orphan, was taken in by an English family. He was brought up Christian and taught to speak, read, and write in English. Literacy in the English language was a rare skill for Indians at the time. While many indigenous people could speak English, very few were educated to read or write in the language. During his time with them, Sassaman developed some loyalties to the English. In 1637, he served as a translator alongside an English military commander in the colonist war with the Pequot people. One account of that war claimed that an Indian translator, quite possibly Sassaman, was dressed in English garb and carrying a gun when some curious Pequots called out to him. "What are you?" they asked. "An Englishman or an Indian?" That question would in many ways define Sassaman's life, but it angered the interpreter. "Come hither," he called back, "and I will tell you." When the Pequots approached, the interpreter raised his gun and shot one of them dead. John Sassamon would spend the rest of his life going between the English and indigenous worlds. From the 1640s until around 1662, Sassamon lived in English communities, most notably Minister John Eliot's praying Indian town of Natick. There, Sassaman worked as a schoolmaster charged with educating other Indians in religion and literacy. Eliot, who encouraged him in his education and his efforts to convert other Indians to Christianity, even arranged for Sassaman to attend Harvard, though he did not graduate. Then in 1662, for reasons that remain unclear, Sassaman decided to leave the English world that he had inhabited for most of his life. He departed from Natick and took up residence with the Wampanoag people, first as an advisor and aide to Wamsutta, or Alexander, and then as an aide to Metacom, or Philip, upon Wamsutta's mysterious death. Sassaman's literacy was an asset when it came to dealings between the English and the Wampanoag. He frequently acted as Metacom's interpreter and scribe when it came to legal matters, including the sales of indigenous lands to the English colonists, who were eager to expand their territorial holdings. In fact, most of the important land deeds that Metacom granted to the English in the 1660s, including this deed which granted the English the right to Taunton, featured Sassaman's signature as a witness or as an interpreter. The course of Sassaman's life changed again in the late 1660s or early 1670s, when tensions flared between Metacom and the English colonists of Plymouth. As the English population expanded and a second generation of colonists came of age, the English desire for land grew. Colonists pressured the Wampanoags and other indigenous people to cede more and more of their territories to English settlement. Colonial officials in Plymouth also tried to restrict Metacom from selling land to other colonies, most notably Rhode Island. Metacom believed his land was his to dispose of as he pleased to likely allies. He also feared that the English incursions on his ancestral territories might leave him and his people with no land left. In 1671, the English, aware of Metacom's increasing displeasure with their land dealings, accused him of plotting war against them. The English demanded that Metacom appear before them, and they forced him and his Wampanoag people to give up their guns and agree not to sell any more territory to strangers. They also forced the Wampanoag to agree to be loyal to the English king and to pay a hefty fine to the colony. Metacom did so, although with noted bitterness. Around this same time, John Eliot, hoping to bring Metacom more firmly under English control, pressured John Sassamon and his fellow preachers, William and Anthony Nahoton, to try and convert the sachem to Christianity. Sassamon was not successful in his attempts, and he apparently lost Metacom's confidence in the process. Soon enough, Sassamon returned to living among the English, on land at Aswampset Neck that he had succeeded in seeing deeded to himself and his family. Metacom's displeasure at him did not appear to prevent him from traveling through Wampanoag territory, and Sassamon still maintained some connections to local indigenous groups. Sassamon was living in Aswampset Neck at the time of his murder. He was around 55 years old when he died, and he was survived by a daughter and a son-in-law.